Welcome back to the Waterlox channel. My name is John. I'm getting started on a small jewelry box or keepsake box, and the first thing I'm going to do is resaw this piece of walnut at the table saw. I picked up this piece at one of my local lumber dealers. It's a really nice quarter sawn piece, and it started off as 6/4, but it was already plain, so it was closer to 1 3/8 of an inch, which was perfect for what I needed because I needed all my stock to be about a ½ inch thick. And here's a shot of the nice book matched grain. I'm going to be trying to do a nice 4-corner grain match in this box, so it's important to keep all these pieces aligned throughout the milling process. I'm going to get started here with the joiner, and then I'll take them over to the planer to get them down to about a ½ inch, and then I'll take them over to the table saw to rip them down to their final width, which in this case was about 4 inches. I swapped out for my crosscut blade and then got these pieces cut to their final length. The overall dimensions of this box are going to be about 24 inches long by 12 inches wide, and as I mentioned before, about 4 inches tall. After getting all these pieces cross-cut to their final length, I'm going to install my Dado Stack and get a series of dados cut into these pieces. There's about 5 of them cut throughout the 4 outside pieces, and then later on I'll make some inside dividers that will also receive some dados. Then I can tilt my blade to 45 degrees and begin cutting the miters. I don't use a stop block for this, I just line up the corner of the piece with the existing kerf in my miter gauge, and that seems to work out fine. Then I'll cut a groove in the bottom of each piece to receive the bottom, and then I can glue the box up. I'm just using normal Type-On 2 here and the blue tape method to clamp everything up. I'll install the plywood bottom, which is just a 1/4 inch piece of walnut plywood I've had for a while, and this is probably the last piece I have of it, so it's good to kind of get this out of the shop because scrap plywood tends to take up a lot of space. And all I need here is a couple pieces of tape to clamp the miters together. Right here I'm just drilling for some 1/8 inch brass pins to help reinforce the miters, and it's also going to provide a nice contrast with the walnut. This is going to be the first of 3 different brass accents on this piece. And I can use my little hacksaw to cut the brass pins down to their rough length, and then I'll just use some super glue and a hammer to get them installed. And now I can begin work on the dividers, which will create the 6 different compartments in the box. I made sure to measure relative to the box itself and not use a measuring tape too often. This gave me more accurate results. And it was also convenient to have a miter saw to make my cross cuts and then also have the Dado Stack still installed. That way I could go piece by piece, getting them cut to their length, as well as cutting the dados in for them. Now I could glue the dividers into place. I use my mallet to hit some of the tighter ones into place as well as my thumb, ouch, and then can move on to the rest. I didn't use too much glue here because it would be difficult to clean up any of the squeeze out deeper into the box, so I made sure to manage the glue squeeze out as best I could. I trimmed off as much of this brass with the hacksaw, and then I got the rest of it flushed down with some 80 grit sandpaper. I made sure not to apply too much pressure and just let the sandpaper do the work so that I would avoid ruining these miters. I milled up some more walnut for the lids, and then I could mark each lid relative to its compartment so that I could take it over the table saw to rip down to its exact width. I try to sneak up on this fit so that it'll be nice and snug but not too tight. And you can see here that this one in particular was a nice perfect fit. The second of the 3 brass accents are going to be these brass rods, which I'm using instead of lining the box with a thinner material. These are going to hold up each lid, so each compartment will get 4 different brass rods, 1 in each corner. I'm just cleaning them up with some steel wool and sandpaper, then I can get them installed with some 5-minute epoxy. And then I could drill some holes for the brass hardware, which will be the 3rd brass accent. I'll install these after I apply finish. The design of this box is heavily inspired by Matt Kenny. He does a lot of boxes like this, though usually they're a lot smaller scale. So I wanted to add some paint on the edge of each of these lids, and he likes to use a lot of milk paint, and I'm using some chalk paint, which is relatively similar as far as the look, which is a nice matte, dry looking finish. I'm just using a nice olive color here, and after that I can sand the tops and bottoms to get rid of any excess paint. The finish I'm using is Waterlox. I only applied 1 coat because the Waterlox that I had started to coagulate a bit, so it was a bit thick and sticky. I didn't want to put another coat on because I didn't want to risk this turning into a repair job. So after applying the first coat, I applied some of this walnut and wax finish that I was given by Mahoney's, and it was actually a nice finish. I just applied it and then let it dry for a little bit and then buffed it off. And finally, I can install the brass poles, which are from Brusso. These are really nice poles. I just use some 5-minute epoxy, and I make sure not to use too much epoxy because I want to avoid any squeeze out. Then I can apply my brand, and this one will be done. Thanks for watching.